President-elect Donald Trump has promised to make the armed forces less woke, as the term goes, by eliminating diversity training and firing any generals that he believes are supporters of a woke military. Now, as commander-in-chief, he already has the power to fire any general he pleases. So which are the woke generals? A draft executive order reportedly shows how he might identify those generals. According to the Wall Street Journal, Trump's transition team is considering the creation of a, quote, warrior board made up of retired senior military personnel to remove generals and admirals found to be, quote, lacking in requisite leadership qualities. Which qualities are those? Well, the draft ordered, which was reviewed by the Journal, does not lay out the criteria for meeting or failing to meet those qualities. And a transition team spokesperson declined to comment on it. But this outside board would clearly bypass the Pentagon's regular system, signaling, as the Journal puts it, that Trump intends to, quote, purge a number of generals and admirals, woke or otherwise. In his first term, Trump celebrated what he called my generals, but the tone soon changed with many of them, you'll recall. General Mark Milley, the former chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has called Trump, quote, the most dangerous person in the country and a fascist. General Jim Mattis, Trump's former Secretary of Defense, said he tries to divide us and called on Americans to reject those in office who would make a mockery of our Constitution. And General John Kelly, Trump's longest-serving White House Chief of Staff, said Trump acted surprised that the military's leadership was loyal to the Constitution and not loyal to Donald Trump personally. One fear now is that this warrior board, if created, could shift that loyalty. Another is that trust in the military, our most trusted institution, itself could suffer.
So joining us now is Vivian Salama, the national politics reporter with the Wall Street Journal, who helped break this story. Vivian, good morning.
Good morning.
So Trump will already be commander-in-chief when he is sworn into office with the ability to fire whoever he wants in the military. Why create this board potentially?
Well, essentially, it would bypass a lot of the promotion systems and sort of the regulations at the Pentagon that would require, that would normally be required for something like this to happen. Usually when you want to do something like this en masse, you would go for some sort of workaround to the usual system. And so just gleaning from the little that we knew from the draft executive order that we reviewed, that is probably the likely scenario, is that he sees that this is the best way to kind of tackle what he views as a bigger problem within the ranks of the military, just sort of sweep through and get rid of as many generals as he can who he deems unfit for leadership.
Vivian, how would you characterize the culture of military leadership as it stands and how this could shift that culture? I know that there's a tradition of nonpartisanship. It's actually surprising to some extent that you have all these quotes from generals characterizing negatively now President-elect Trump. But how might this warrior board change things from where they are to where Trump wants them to be?
So this is something that the transition team, the Trump campaign, and certainly Donald Trump himself has talked about for quite some time. You just previewed talking about how he's criticized the sort of, quote, wokeness of the military. But really what the executive order, the draft executive order says is that they're looking to tackle anyone who's not fit for leadership. They would go after 3- and 4-star generals to try to figure out how they can streamline and better prepare the military to focus on, let's say, their tasks of going to war, protecting the country, and not be bogged down by politics or any other partisan-related things. Now, ironically, there's been criticism against Donald Trump that he has tried to politicize certain branches, certain departments in government, and certainly the military was one of them. This move could potentially do that. And so it sort of works against what they're trying to argue for, which is the politicization of the military. But beyond that, I was getting calls nonstop from Pentagon officials, retired military yesterday when our story broke, just in terms of the generational impact that something like this could have, where you're going after some of the most experienced members of the military, and presumably in times of war especially, but even in times of peace, you don't want those people to be purged from the ranks of the military, because that experience really goes a long way, especially on battlefields. So, there's a real concern that in purging those senior leaders, you would lose that experience.
And so, Vivian, who could be purged? Who's potentially on the chopping block here?
So it's hard to say from the draft order. However, we did speak with a number of military officials, and there has been a great concern that the chairman of Joint Chiefs, CQ Brown, could be among them. Now, President Trump has not been happy with General Brown because of the fact that he talked very openly about the George Floyd protests back in 2020 and how he was very moved by it, and that's something that did not necessarily sit very well with Trump. He felt like CQ Brown was speaking out of order, and it sort of speaks to that alleged wokeness that Donald Trump speaks about. And this is troubling a lot of people, because CQ Brown is one of very few people of color in the highest ranks of the military right now. And the idea that he could somehow be a target to something like this warrior board really feels unsettling to a lot of people in the military, where they have been pushing for greater diversity, particularly in the highest ranks, those 3- and 4-star generals.
Yeah, we don't want to see this politicize the military. The last and most trusted institution in America, more than 60% of people saying they have at least a great deal of trust in the military. Vivian Salama, thank you very much.